A storyline in Coronation Street at the moment sees Audrey Roberts, one of the long-standing characters played by Sue Nichols, tackling loneliness, mental health as well amongst older generations. There's some real distressing scenes that have been shown in recent weeks, attempted suicide, daily drinking, questioning her role in her family, her worth in her family. In one scene, Audrey can be seen explaining why she'd accidentally taken too many tablets. As we get busier and busier, not doing anything for the best part of 3 years, are we accidentally neglecting the older members of our family? It's easy, I think, to, well, I wouldn't say ignore, but not be aware of what's going on around you as we get wrapped up in our own kind of day-to-day lives again. Let's chat to Richard Robinson. He's the CEO of the charity Hourglass, which is based in Sudbury. They support elderly victims of abuse and exploitation within the UK. Richard, morning.
Good morning.
And I don't abuse my mum. I love my mum. I love her dearly. But this kind of, some of the things that Audrey's was explaining in Coronation Street resonated with me with the way some of my mum's behaviour is. My mum's 78 and she lives on her own, and she kind of struggles to feel wanted in many ways. And I would think this is something, as a charity, you see a lot.
Yeah, I think we have to give Coronation Street quite a lot of credit here, because it's a subject area which they've picked up on, and they are now mirroring sort of fiction with real life in a really, really intelligent way. And I think it's something that we as an organisation hear every day. I think the suicide element is something which I think will surprise a lot of people, that there is a second peak of suicide victims in the over 75 categories, which I have to say is mainly men. Statistics reveal that's mainly men, but there is that second peak. And I think it comes from that feeling of worthlessness. And that's really been seen more since the pandemic. I think there are statistics that reveal that since the pandemic, that there are some older people, I think it's 39% of older people, hadn't had a meaningful conversation in a fortnight. And so therefore there is a significant increase in loneliness around older people. I think 1 in 12 older people say that they feel lonely most of the time. And people over the age of 50 are far more likely to feel lonely, and this exacerbates poor health. And especially with the crisis, the current financial crisis going on, that there is this feeling of being cut off. And I think the other thing that's worth pointing out around this is this notion, and I think you've picked up on this with mentioning your own mother, is that there is this sandwich generation here, which I think I'm a member of as well, where we have children growing up that we need to look out for. And we need to, as part of that sandwich generation, to find ways to squeeze it all in, including looking after our older relatives, whether they're our mothers or fathers or grandparents. It's a difficult one.
What's gone wrong in this country? Okay, I love my mum. We all love our parents. I ring my mum every single day because I know how she feels, and if she doesn't get that call from me, she gets down. She likes to have contact with us every single day. Other societies, Richard, tend to be more mindful of their older people and kind of hold them up as some kind of bastions, the head of the family, and they look after them and they will move in with them and they will do everything for them. We don't seem to do that in this country, do we?
I think it's very easy to generalise in that way. We have representatives from across society and across different cultures in the UK, and we get calls from all societies and all cultures, including those cultures that have their mothers or fathers move in with them in older age, and abuse is rife across all across all sectors and across all age groups. It is the abuse of older people is the last taboo. But to pick up on your point, I think I would have hoped that the pandemic and the lockdowns would have meant that people would be more focused on checking in with their parents and checking in with older relatives and perhaps even friends who live nearby. And I think there is a subtle uplift in that. I think there are people who are more community spirited because of what happened during the pandemic. And we need to find ways of ensuring that older people don't feel lonely, that don't feel cut off. And that the storyline on Coronation Street is not unusual, sadly.
What do we do? I watched Audrey on Coronation Street. One thing she said was to her family, "You're only after my money," and I've had that as well. You know, I've been on the phone to my mum, and my mum said, "Blah blah blah. Why can't you come through?" I said, "I can't, mum. I'm at work." Well, you can take some time off. I can't afford to take time off. Well, I'll be dead soon. Then you won't have to worry about money, will you? Because you'll get your hands on the house and my savings. Why do older people have that kind of mindset?
Well, I guess it's to do with what they feel their use is. And as I said earlier about the feelings of worthlessness, and some of the abuse that we hear is about children saying, "Well, look, it's my inheritance anyway, so I may as well use it now." And so there is this connection between loneliness and neglect, and the more focused and supportive adult children across society, of course, are never in a million years going to take their parents' money or their inheritance before it's due. But you would be surprised. We take 15,000 calls plus a year with issues ranging from financial abuse, their money and savings being stolen by their children.
How disgusting. I think, I must apologise, Rich. We've kind of taken it away from the subject a little bit. Can I just say, Audrey Roberts in Coronation Street, that storyline, she is not being abused by her family.
No.
This is the way her mind is working overtime, as it does with my mum. I find it disgusting to believe that there are people out there who would take advantage of their parents and elderly family members, but this happens.
100%. And that is the vast proportion of the calls that we get here at Hourglass are around children and relations taking advantage of the older generation. It's as simple as that. It is the notion of elder abuse is an abuse of trust. And I think, as I said earlier, it is the last taboo. It's an area which is underfunded, undersupported, and misunderstood. And for us as an organisation, it's a nightmare scenario.
Can you give me some examples, Richard, of how some people you've dealt with who've contacted you have been abused or exploited?
Okay, well, I can give you an example of an older woman where the type of abuse she was facing wasn't actually picked up until after her death, and the executor of her will had found checkbook stubs written out for £12, where actually those checks were for £1,200, and they had been taken by their children. Meaning that by the time she'd passed away, all of her money and savings had gone, and was struggling to afford food on a day-to-day basis. And this happened during the pandemic, where older people had little understanding of who to call in those situations when you can't trust your own children. And that's just one example. I mean, there some of the examples I could give you would make your hands to hair stand on end. As I say, it's a terrifically misunderstood area of abuse.
You used the word taboo earlier, and you can see why it's taboo, because I would think no parent would want anyone else to know that their children have treated them so despicably.
And actually, this is one of the problems that we face on a daily basis, in the respect that we cannot criminalise. We struggle to criminalise the people who abuse older people. Because of the fact that the victims do not want to criminalise their own children or relatives. And those that are being abused by a carer are actually of the minority. It's the majority of calls we get are around familial abuse. So the Audrey Roberts storyline, though, of around isolation and that feeling of loneliness, there is a real issue around self-abuse here. And when I say self-abuse, I don't mean somebody hurting themselves. I mean drinking, not taking care of themselves. And
self-destruct, really. Self-destruct, thinking, what have I got to live for? Well, I'm old, I've had my life. It's that kind of feeling of worthlessness.
100%. And it's that mental decline that comes from that. So the feeling of loneliness and worthlessness will exacerbate any poor health, and will ultimately lead to. I mean, there are some figures here that suggest that the risks of loneliness in older age and the social isolation and loneliness have been identified as a risk of stroke, coronary heart disease, increased risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's just a question of having mental stimulation, having the love of your family. And this is why we get so many calls after Christmas, because the older generation are within that family bubble again during Christmas. And when that rug has been pulled away, then we get calls in January, February.
Richard, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we certainly need to get you on again, perhaps closer to Christmas, because we can't fit any more in. But I'd love to chat to you again. If somebody is affected by what we've been chatting about, you can get in touch with Hourglass. Their number is 0808 808 141, and it's We Are Hourglass.
That's wrong. Sorry, can I just correct you there? Sorry. The number is 0808 808 8141.
What did I say?
Yeah, you just missed out the other 8.
Okay.
So that's fine. Thank you for reading out the number for us, and we would really encourage people to give us a ring if you have problems or you'd like some advice. And Richard, we're here 24/7.
Come back on closer to Christmas, and we'll have another chat. I think
look forward to it.
I think that'd be really helpful. Thank you. 0808 808 8141 is the number. wearehourglass.org is the website. We are Hourglass, all one word, .org. The charity can help. If you are an older person, if you're the family member of an older person who you think might be struggling, get in touch with Hourglass or bbc.co.uk/action line. Nobody wants to think of their relative, their mum, their dad, their nan, their granddad going through that kind of turmoil. BBC Suffolk with Rod Stewart.